I would like to introduce Kimberly Kaufman, who is the Manager of Supply Diversity and Inclusion at Delta. Kimberly is a marketer, a program manager, diversity and inclusion leader. In her current role, she executes a strategic supply diversity initiative at Delta Airlines that spans the company's global operations. Kimberly was also very instrumental in bringing this session to life and work with our team to ensure that we created a valuable and insightful experience for our women of color entrepreneurs. We're so grateful for your support, Kimberly, and we look forward to hearing from you. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming Kimberly Kaufman.
So hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here today. And Audrey, thank you so much for the introduction. Your team and I have been working together to conceptualize and plan this workshop for some time, and today is the big payoff. On behalf of Delta Airlines and our more than 70,000 employees around the world, we are honored to be a WBENC Woman of Color sponsor this year and to co-host this business development program, Taking Flight, Creating and Executing a Successful Strategic Plan, hosted by Corporate Strategy and Supplier Diversity and Inclusion. We have been a long-standing corporate partner to WBENC and are excited to share information about our commitment to supplier diversity and inclusion and creating equitable opportunities for women business enterprises to partner with us in delivering goods and services to support the operation of our business and our ability to serve our customers around the world. Our team helped shape the strategic direction of Delta's Global Supplier Diversity and Inclusion Program and leads the development and management of it in alignment with our company's diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. Our team advocates for the growth of diverse suppliers within our supply base and enabling inclusion within category strategies and sourcing events. Delta's supplier diversity commitment spans more than 24 years and remains an integral part of our supply chain and corporate growth strategy. In 2020, our CEO, Ed Bastian, established a series of commitments to help Delta be a part of the solution towards a more inclusive and equitable society. Our team works to facilitate the development of policies and procedures to advance supplier diversity. Our Vice President, Supply Chain Management, serves on Delta's Diversity and Inclusion Council. I serve as the chair for the National Minority Supplier Development Council's Air, Rail, and Transportation Industry Group, and Delta leaders share their expertise and thought leadership speaking at internal and external supplier diversity events. At Delta, we look forward to continuing to share our mutual commitment towards advancing supplier diversity. Our company is starting to recover from the pandemic, and we'll need your help to facilitate our ability to connect our customers to the world. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our special guest, Michelle Horn, Chief Strategy Officer at Delta.
Thank you, Kimberly. Good point for me to jump in?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, I want to do three things. Biggest one is just to thank everybody here for having us. Mary, maybe you can just take it down for a minute because I'm not going to talk from the slide. I'm just going to talk to the group. So I want to thank everybody for having us on behalf of Corporate Strategy. We're really excited to be here today, partnering with WBENC and with our Supplier Diversity and Inclusion Group. So let's just take a minute on strategic planning. This has been a year when we've all been looking down, right? And trying to just go day by day, minute by minute, what's been going on in this crazy year. Strategic planning is a bit about picking ourselves up and looking at the horizon just a little bit. What's the next step? Where do we want to be? And how do we want to get there? And I have came to Delta actually in the very early part of this year when we've been very much looking down. And so for us too, we are now looking forward, figuring out what we want to be as we move ourselves through this pandemic and out the other side. So we're excited about the partnership with everybody here today. You know, part of our recovery and growth plan going forward, which I'm really excited about, involves a huge commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, social justice, corporate responsibility. And, you know, as we think about that and as we think about strategic planning, which is all about context, I thought I might take a minute to just talk about what we're up to a little bit more on DEI, tell you a little bit about my background and how I came to this place in a strategy role to the extent that's helpful in further reach outs. And also just talk a little bit about Delta and how we're thinking about planning coming forward, just as context. So first off, diversity, equity, inclusion, huge priority for us, as I said, as we move forward, always has been. I sit on our ESG Council and on our DEI committee. And those of you who will see what we are talking about later this week on Capital Markets Day, it's a really central part of our just strategy going forward and what we value. That's all true globally. If we come a little bit closer to home, I just want to talk about a few things going on in Atlanta, particularly as it relates to supply chain initiatives. First of all, we are partnering with the Atlanta Business League to create Taking Your Business to the Next Level, which is all about helping our Metro Atlanta African-American owned businesses build profitable, scalable, sustainable enterprises, and all about best practice sharing and mentoring. We're donating 50 million Sky bonus points to diverse organizations and focusing on women and minority-owned businesses. That's very helpful for small business owners like the wonderful people on this call. We're working with WBENC to partner with more diverse suppliers in areas that are really important to Delta's recovery, of which there are many, including our Global Cleanliness Organization, which we are really excited about. And finally, we're sponsoring this WBENC Women of Color series, which is why we're all here today. So that's a part of, very close to home. If we step back just a notch, we have a goal to double our spend with Black-owned businesses by 2025. We have changed our bidding processes and RFPs to include participation from minority-owned businesses in a much more aggressive manner. And we are working really hard to support that by focusing on identification in addition to getting those RFP processes straightforward. So my good friend Kimberly is leading the charge with us on all of that, and a really important person as we keep moving forward in this space. So we're planning to evaluate all of our suppliers on every contract to ensure that all of our suppliers are held accountable for anti-racist policies within each of their own organizations. So this is always a journey, but we're really committed to this next step and all the ones that will come after as we all work on lots more progress together. And those are all in the context of a broader set of programs for Delta and the community at large. So I've been at Delta for about a year. I have touched strategy in 3 different ways over the course of my career before coming to this strategic strategy role at Delta. One is I spent about 10 years as a partner in a management consulting firm working largely on strategy. That was McKinsey, helping companies look towards the horizon and figure out where they want to be and how they want to get there. I spent the next 10 years on McKinsey's strategy, which was taking a big role in helping that firm go global, helping that firm broaden from serving clients in one kind of way to 9 different lines of business, if you think about it that way. And as I said, expanding a lot into emerging markets across Africa and Asia and parts of Latin America. And then after 22 years, I left McKinsey and went more towards the smaller business route, but working with a company called SoftBank, which was helping fast growth tech companies still kind of at past ABC kind of growth capital, but to help them figure out how to build new businesses on the back of concepts they already had, or take concepts that were working in one market to new countries or new parts of the US. So those were all of my strategy roles before coming into Delta. And then because I had been talking with Ed for a long time and came into the corporate strategy role in the very beginning of this year, which I'm super excited to be now. So, and I have to say, of all those roles, this is an amazing one. So my husband, John, calls this my like a happy job. So I hope that stays that way. So Delta through the pandemic, the airline industry, we've all, like, I'm sure each of us on this call have been working through, what have the last 18 months meant for us? Each of us. For Delta, it was a 1-week period where we lost 90% of our volume. So you have to think about things pretty differently. And to make that simple, we actually just stepped way back and thought about what are our real competitive advantages, which is one way to think about strategy. Like, what are the things we have at our core that we really want to protect and build from in the future? And so for us, that is our people, our brand and customers, our operation, our global network, and our balance sheet. And so if we thought about, we came really simply with a simple way I'll talk about in the end, but if you just think about those for a minute as strategy, for our people, above all, we needed to protect our people. So we communicated a lot. We did not lay anybody off across the organization, and we added a chief wellness officer. We will talk in a minute when we talk about the balance sheet of how we paid for that. But like for us, our long-term core was our people, and so that was a choice we made. On our brand, you've probably seen our commitment to our customers and our commitment to be a premium airline. We blocked the middle seat to make sure people felt safe and felt comfortable flying, and we did that all the way through the end of May. We're probably the biggest move there. For our operation, we obviously had to scale it back, but we did it in a way that held on to most of our aircraft. We put them in the desert, and we put them to sleep, but we did not send them out. So we're ready to scale again. But we did have to fly and we protected our hubs, which are really important to us. So we made sure that we kept our hubs as healthy as we could. Same thing on our global network. Our partners are really important to us. And so we invested in trying to be as helpful as we could to our partners as they worked through their own challenges, people like Aeromexico, people like Virgin. We have a close partnership with other Air France and KLM. So we worked very closely with them to help them. And finally, on balance sheet, obviously you've got to pay for all this somehow. And we were fortunate to have a pretty healthy balance sheet in the earlier part. And so we found ways to take on more debt, which will now be a priority to pay down, but we were really lucky to have it. And we're committed to making that a competitive advantage in the future. So Ed, so for us, we just thought about what are the key parts of our business we really, really want to be core to our future. Ed had a really great way of distilling that, just saying, protect our people, protect our cash, protect our future. What I gave you was kind of what are the brass tacks that are underneath those phrases. And that was a really helpful rallying cry for what was our strategy to come through. And now, having done that, we are in this exciting place of thinking about what happens next. And so for the corporate strategy team, we're in probably the exact same place as almost all of you, which is, okay, we made it. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't comfortable, but we're proud of it. And we're excited about the future. So what happens next? And so we're going through very much similar process to what a lot of our team is going to talk about to you today. Maybe just a couple of words on like how to think about strategic planning. I really think about it like it sounds like very processy sometimes, as some of you know. We've even got, I think, some Kinsey alums on this call, which is exciting. Thank you for the chat. I really think about it as literally, if you look forward, where do you want to be in 3 years? And in getting there, what do you have to help you win? And so, there's lots of process, and there's many really great frameworks that can be helpful. And I think the team is going to share a lot of that today. But starting with just a real focus on the customer and a real focus on like what's different and what's your particular way to win. And what, we have our competitive advantages. They're obviously a bigger place, so they're kind of bigger things. But what is it that is really the basis of success and excitement? And finally, no business is totally complete without people. So whatever's going to be exciting to your people and whatever that means for the people you need to hire and develop, that's got to be a core part of it. So trying to think about that. If I think about, I think the team has some really hopefully helpful content. Just we all benefit from stepping back and thinking about that in a little bit more disciplined way. So I hope this is a really useful session. I also know that you'll challenge us, which will be as valuable. So for me, I really wanted to just one more time thank everybody for joining today, and hope that what we've prepared is helpful. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the team.
Hi, everyone. While Mary's pulling the slides back up, just want to quickly introduce myself. I'm Felipe Arias. I'm a member of Michelle's corporate strategy team here at Delta. I'm very excited to be here with you today, as well as other members of our team you'll see up here. They will be introducing themselves as they come on board, but all of us have a unique background that we're excited to share with you, but also very excited to spend a good amount of time with you guys today in breakout sessions, learning from you, working with you as we attack corporate strategy planning together. And so my background, a little bit, I was management consultant beginning my career, similar to Michelle, but I found my happy job here at Delta as well. Took a couple steps to get here in terms of leading some business units at a company called Invista, as well as working with private equity on some transformation. But very excited to be here with you guys today and looking forward to getting into the content with you. So what are we planning to cover today? So really two big buckets of things. One, what is strategic planning? What do we mean by that? And what is a framework and a way to start thinking about some of those things Michelle mentions in terms of looking at the horizon with a focus on the customer? What's next? Where do we want to be in a few years? And how do we get there, and what helps us win? So that's kind of the left-hand side of the page. And what does that mean to you? So we're hoping that it will help you to identify hidden threats, opportunities, things you might have been thinking about, but looking at it in a different light. Clarify how you're going to win specifically for your targeted customers. So a lot of what we will talk to today will be the lens of our target customer, which is business travelers, but obviously all of you have spent a lot of time thinking about who exactly are you trying to target, how can you win with them? And then as Michelle referenced at the end of her speech, how do you think about organizing your people, your processes, your resources towards what's going to drive the most value for your customers and ultimately allow you guys to capture that value that you've created. And then think about that in ways that are not just operational efficiencies, not just day-to-day continuous grind, get the next win out, but take a little bit to look ahead of where do I want to be and what changes can I make to get myself moving in that direction and get my organization moving in that direction. So we will be using this framework throughout the day, which really ties from your vision, what's the aspiration of what you want to be, down towards what are the tactics, what are the things I'm going to do tomorrow differently to help push me in that direction. So moving from your aspiration to the big question of like, why am I here? What am I doing? And that starts to get into who is my target customer? What do I want to do with them that is different? And how do I win? How do I measure that? So that's the objectives piece here. What are the results I'm looking to achieve and for whom? And then think about how can I start doing that? What are big chunks of work that I can put together and think about to start breaking down those objectives to really measurable things that I can go attack with my team? What's the approach for getting there? And then what are the tactics? Again, what are that day-to-day smaller action plans that we can start building towards to build up to towards those initiatives, meet those objectives, and deliver on the vision I've laid out. So what does good strategic planning look like? Number one, Michelle really hit on this, differentiates your business. It should be how you really win in your market that you choose to plan. And that's more than a slogan, a vision statement. It's distinct, it's specific, it should be impactful and really make a difference for your customers. Triggered by evolving environment in an industry. It's not something that you do once, you put it on the shelf and you're glad you did it. You really are thinking about this evolving as the world around you evolves, as your customers evolve, as your competitors evolve. We'll be spending some time on that as we go into some of the breakout sessions as well. It's both the ideas, the vision, and the execution. So a great strategy that you can't go and start working towards is not a great strategy. It really needs to be something that you can execute on. And it balances that uncertainty. You're gonna have to take a lot of steps in the dark. You guys know that much better than I certainly do in terms of taking those risks and making those calculated risks in terms of stepping forward into that dark and taking uncomfortable leaps of faith. And I think that's something that really sets apart good strategic planning from others as well. And so what does that look like for Delta? Just what is the background that we're coming from? So Michelle mentioned some of this. There's been a lot of uncertainty in our industry. And so we've thought about this from our corporate strategy team and helping think through, what are those customer shifts? What is the customer experience? Think about our target customers in terms of the regrowth of business travel. What will that look like? How do we make sure that we keep investing in things that are important to us in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, and sustainability? And so our team spends a lot of time thinking about how do we define those priorities and gain alignment across teams, and then deliver on those priorities. Again, strategy needs to be tied to the execution and build those critical capabilities for other teams to be able to build upon and push Delta forward. And so the things that we leverage in building our competitive advantage, again, Michelle, I think, hit on all of these as she went through, but really focusing on our people. Our people are the core of who we are. They're the connection between us and our customers. They're what sets us apart from our competitors. And so we really lean on our people to be that differentiating factor and the reason why our customers want to keep coming back and flying Delta. We spend a lot of time, talking about, and hopefully you've heard on Delta flights, we know you have a choice when you travel. We want you to continue to choose Delta. And that builds on the customer loyalty. So another one of our competitive advantages. So how do we think about how our brand can be even more impactful to high value business travelers, small business travelers, people that really we want to develop that relationship with, and building beyond just the travel into partnerships with a co-brand credit card like American Express, and think about how that loyalty continues to drive advantages for us as we build for the future. So I really appreciated kind of getting into this initial overview with you guys. From here, I'll hand it over to the team to walk through more parts of that framework we went through and get us into the breakouts and talking together.
Thanks, Felipe. My name is John Mekchin. I'm a general manager on the corporate strategy team. Again, thanks for having us here. Really excited to share this with you and look forward to hearing your thoughts. My background is management consulting. I was at Boston Consulting Group before joining Delta approximately 2 years ago. So going to spend the next 10 minutes or so talking about vision, mission, and objectives. These are the first three pillars of our strategic planning framework, and planning to talk through these, and then we'll spend more of the time on the next three parts of the pillars, but wanted to talk through this. So vision, next slide, please. So it's been referenced. Our vision is our business aspiration. It's what do we want to be in the future? It's very much looking into the future. So we have a quote here from our CEO, Ed Bastian, at the Consumer Electronics Show in 2020. Delta's goal is to make travel something customers don't have to endure, but a magical experience. And I think what's interesting here is it's not, we want to be a great airline. We want to be a travel experience company and make that truly exceptional. So for Delta, our vision is, have a great travel experience. So our mission, and this talks about, talks about, why the company exists. I would also say that it's about what are we doing today? What do we want to be today? And for us, it's very clear. It's no one better connects the world. That is Delta's mission statement. And I think what's so nice about this phrase is we can break it down and I think learn a lot in 6 short words. So no one better. So we want to be the best. That's what we're striving for. Connects. So we're all about bringing people together, bringing groups together, bringing cargo together. We're all about connecting people. And then the world. So we see ourselves as, certainly we're a US-based airline, but we see ourselves as an international company, bringing people across the world together. And so from that mission, we lay out objectives. And this is about, what do we want to achieve and for whom? And it's been alluded to. We'll start with our target customer segment is the business traveler. And so each year Delta puts together what we call our flight plan. And this lays out our objectives for the next year. And so here's an example from our 2019 flight plan summary. You can see our mission statement in the center, no one better connects the world. And then for whom, we know it's about the business traveler. And our stakeholders are our people, our customers, our owners, and then our partners and communities. So that's who we're trying to achieve this mission for. And we have various objectives within there, safety, employees, results, investments, customer operations, and then partners and communities. So we'll now get into more specific. Those were not objectives. That's how we get towards our objectives. And there's this great framework called the SMART framework. So it stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And we want objectives to be SMART. And we'll get into examples of what SMART objectives look like. But I think it's important as we do the SMART framework that all of our objectives are specific. So no room for misinterpretation. Everyone understands what it takes to achieve that objective. Measurable. So we can measure whether or not we achieve that objective. Achievable, that it's realistic for us to achieve this objective. Relevant, so it should tie back to our mission and vision statements. And then time bound, so that we know when the goal starts and ends. So we pulled out just a few excerpts of our 2019 Delta flight plan in more detail, which lays out some of the objectives here. I'd encourage you, if you're interested in learning more, you can look online and see our full Delta flight plan with lots more objectives on it. But wanted to call out, a few examples that in each of our quadrants that hits on the SMART framework. So in the top left, achieve at least 85% positive employee engagement. So we know it's 85% is the target. That'll be measured from our employee survey. This is all of these objectives are within 2019, so they all are time bound. And we believe that our people are a core differentiator for us, as Felipe and Michelle have alluded to. And so positive employee engagement is crucial to the success of our business. Sorry, do you mind going back? Yeah, so you'll see, I don't need to spend a whole bunch of time on these other ones, but in each of these quadrants, we've laid out SMART objectives that are measurable and actionable and achievable. Great, next slide, thanks. So coming back, that summarizes the first three parts of our strategic planning framework: the vision, mission, and objectives. My hope is that you've had the opportunity to think about your vision, mission, and objectives. If not, that's totally fine, and we'll have some time to catch up. But I'd encourage you to think about, what is your company's long-term aspiration? And that can be, 1 to 2 sentences. You saw Ed's quote. It was pretty concise. On the mission side, why does your company exist? Mentioned for Delta, it's no one better connects the world. And then objectives. What are the results that your company aims to achieve? And certainly keeping this, narrow and focused will help. And we'd ask you to think about, what are the 3 to 5 for your company, or the 3 to 5 most important ones for your company. Great. So we'll move into the initiatives. I'll hand it over to my colleague, Peter.
Hi, everyone. My name is Peter Rasmussen. I'm a manager on the corporate strategy team. By way of introduction, I have worked at Delta for 3 years, the last year on the corporate strategy team, but before that on our sales team, working on Asia and Australia, business strategy, and in network planning, which figures out where we fly, what aircraft, and what the schedule is. And before that, I worked in DC for a couple of years on working for the US government and actually working for a small business trade group. So it's a real honor to be here today speaking to you all. And I know from my time working for a small business and serving small businesses how precious your time is. So really appreciate you deciding to spend it with us this afternoon. And we're keeping track of the questions in the chat box, but just wanted to let you know that at the end of this section, we will have some time for Q&A for you to ask any questions about what you've heard from Michelle, from Felipe, from John, or what you hear in this section. So this part of strategic planning is focused on determining what you need to do to reach the objectives that you've outlined in the previous section. And the first step in determining what initiatives make sense for your business to pursue is understanding the context in which your business sits and where you might be able to develop a competitive advantage. And I'm sure many of you have seen this framework before and filled out a SWOT analysis before, but just wanted to spend a minute explaining how this framework works for those who haven't filled this out before. And we will, if you haven't already filled out a SWOT analysis, we have a workshop at the end of this section where you will have the opportunity to fill out a SWOT analysis using this framework as it applies to your business. So you can see at the top of this analysis, we have a gray bar that is defining your target customers and your industry. And that's really important to have in the back of your head as you're putting this together is who do you intend to serve and what are the unique challenges and opportunities within your industry? So I'm going to start on the left quadrant with strengths. What could be a strength? A strength, you want to focus on something that is difficult to reproduce or imitate, because if it's easy to imitate or reproduce, as soon as you put it together, your competitors can copy it and do the same thing, which makes it a not very durable competitive advantage. So assets, it could be a physical asset, it could be what we would call a human capital asset of a special skill set that you have or that some of your employees have. Or it could be an intangible asset like intellectual property. It could also be a brand or reputation that you've developed within your community or the group of customers that you're serving. Weaknesses is kind of the flip side of that. I know that a challenge for many small businesses is a lack of resources, which could be financial resources, it could be physical capital, it could be human capital, it could be a variety of things. I'm sure I don't need to have to tell you about all of the challenges that you're facing. It could be more capabilities or processes. Maybe you have an idea for something, but it's not put together in a way where you're getting a consistent quality in your product that you're producing or the service that you're delivering to your customers. Or it could be a high cost structure. This is something that, in our industry, compared to some of our competitors that are low cost or ultra low cost carriers, we have a higher cost structure and we're positioned to serve a business customer that's willing to pay a premium. But having that higher cost structure makes it more difficult for us to serve certain customers who are laser focused on price and only able to pay the lowest fares. In the opportunities quadrant, I would think about regulatory changes that could be impacting your business, economic changes, or environmental changes. This could also be social changes. If you think about how the COVID pandemic has caused a polarization of income. It's caused people to move from certain parts of the country to other parts of the country. COVID has caused all sorts of disruptions to our country and I'm sure to your community as well. So I would think about how your business can take advantage of some of those contextual changes. New technologies can also create a great opportunity for your business. Also shifting consumer preferences. In the pandemic, we've seen consumers much more interested in using self-service, more willing to meet virtually like we're meeting now. In our industry, the way that people are traveling and their reasons for traveling are different. I would also think about growing markets. Are there certain customer segments or geographies that you're serving that maybe you're growing at an accelerated rate in a way that you could take advantage of? And finally, in the bottom right corner, threats. Obviously you have to think about your existing competition, but also new entrants and emerging competition. And I would encourage you to think pretty broadly about that, not only direct competitors that are producing the same products or same services that you are, but goods or services that could be substituted from what you're doing, and maybe even competitive threats that they haven't rolled out a product or service yet, but you think they might be putting something in the market in the near future. And then finally, supply chain shortages and disruptions. We know that's a particularly salient issue within the last couple of months, and you want to think, all the way up and down the value chain about how those threats could be impacting your ability to deliver to your customers. So once you've filled out the SWOT analysis and thought through the context, it's time to move to the next step, which is thinking about how initiatives that you could pursue would create value for your business. I think this is a really, really important step because a lot of businesses will, chase something that sounds cool, or it sounds, something that would be maybe fun or interesting for them to work on. But then later down the line, you realize that it's not actually something that can create value for your business. So I encourage you to think long and hard about what customer segment you're trying to serve, and define pretty explicitly how this will create value for your business. And an initiative can do that in one of two ways. You can either grow revenue, or it can reduce costs, or there are some initiatives that you might pursue that would be a hybrid in both growing revenue and reducing costs. We put together, this is a non-exhaustive list of a couple of strategies in each category. So on the revenue side, this could be product development, either improving upon a product or service that you already have in the market, or developing a new product. At Delta, we'll walk you through in a minute an example of a new product that we rolled out a couple years ago called Delta Premium Select. Another strategy we pursued at Delta to grow revenue is growing our loyalty program, our SkyMiles program, which incentivizes customers who may have otherwise flown on another airline to fly on us, but also encourages customers who are already going to fly on Delta to spend more money with us. And then finally, another revenue growth example is pricing optimization. Airlines are known as best in class for pricing optimization. We've got a whole department that has a suite of tools devoted to making sure that we're capturing all of the value that we're creating for our customers by matching the right price, fare offers to the right people. And then on the cost side, one example of how you can reduce costs is by scaling, by essentially spreading the fixed costs of your business over more people. So a way that we've done that at Delta is through what we call upgauging our aircraft, which is basically using larger aircraft to serve the stations that we fly to. Example of how that would work to help us reduce costs is, we need 2 pilots flying every plane. If they're flying a plane that has 200 people on it, as opposed to a 50-seat aircraft, we only have to spread those fixed costs of the pilot over, we get to spread those costs over 200 people rather than just 50 people. So it enables us to serve more customers at a lower cost. And then another example that's been very salient recently is staffing and supply chain optimization. The key here is making sure that the staffing and supply chain resources are aligned with the business needs, which in the airline industry, we've seen change a lot over the last year and a half. So I want to walk through an example of an initiative that we undertook a few years ago called Premium Select. If you're not familiar with this product, it's on many of our large international aircraft that are serving long-haul international destinations. So on a large international aircraft, you would typically see these four categories of seats. At the very high end, we have Delta One, which is live flatbed. It's our most premium experience. Delta Premium Select is kind of one tier below that. It's similar, the physical seat is similar to what you would see in a typical domestic first class aircraft. And then below that, we have Comfort Plus and Main Cabin. So to highlight some of the differences that you would see in Premium Select as opposed to Comfort Plus or Main Cabin, you'd see a wider seat and additional recline, a footrest and leg rest on selected aircraft, bigger entertainment screen, some service upgrades, and exclusive amenities. Let's go to the next slide. So we put together an example for this initiative. Again, this is a non-exhaustive list, but just some of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats that we may have considered at the time that led us to conclude that Premium Select would be a good opportunity for us to pursue. So on the strength side, we know that we have a good network coverage. In other words, we serve many destinations throughout the US and globally. We have some of the best operational reliability in the business and on-time performance. We've got great customer service, and we've got acclaimed award-winning loyalty program. On the weaknesses side, as I alluded to earlier, we've got a higher cost structure than certain low-cost carriers, which makes it more difficult for us to serve those very price-sensitive customers who are only thinking about, or price is their only criteria. And we have lower brand recognition in international markets than we do in the US. On the opportunities side, we saw a growing market for premium international travel. And as I mentioned earlier, we've seen more cost efficiencies over time driven by upgrades to the fleet and us using larger aircraft. And then on the threat side, before we introduced Delta Premium Select, some of our international competitors had already rolled out a premium economy offering. So we needed to think about creating our own product offering to compete with that. And this initiative, Delta Premium Select, is for us was more of a revenue play than a cost play. And the way that we would have thought about how this creates value for Delta is by offering a more compelling value proposition to our target group of customers, business customers, who value a premium experience but can't afford or not permitted by their company policy to purchase Delta One, which is our most premium international offering. So we can create value with this initiative through one of two mechanisms. One is upselling business customers who would have otherwise traveled in Main Cabin or Comfort Plus if Premium Select were not available. Or two, by enticing business customers who would have otherwise flown on our competitors to fly with Delta because we're offering this new product. So I think we'll pause there. We've done a lot of talking so far, and I believe that Audrey will be moderating our Q&A session. If you have any questions about anything that I just talked about or anything you heard in any of the previous sections, we'd love to hear your questions.
Of course, thank you so much for that, Peter. We do have a couple of questions, and Felipe has been answering it in the chat, but in case anyone missed it, I wanted to ask a few of those questions. The first question that we received was, how do you move from the SWOT analysis to a meaningful strategy? And in parentheses, the individual says prioritization.
Yeah, that's a great question and very timely, because the next section is going to be focused on prioritization. But the way I would think of the SWOT analysis, it's kind of get your your brain turning and start thinking about the context that your business sits in, and where you might be able to create a durable competitive advantage. And then understanding that context, what we would suggest is to brainstorm a list of different initiatives that could focus on any one of those quadrants. It could focus on an opportunity, or it could focus on capitalizing a strength, or maybe there's a weakness that you can actually, maybe you have a high cost structure and you have an initiative that focuses on changing your cost structure. And then once you have come up with those initiatives based on the SWOT analysis, based on the objectives that you set on the previous, in the previous step, you'll focus on prioritization, which we'll cover in the next section.
Awesome, thank you. And then next we have Eloise, I believe is how you say her name. She says, Delta is a large corporation. Is there really value for a 6-person company to go through all these steps?
I think that for a smaller company, the process will look different. It'll be a lot less probably bureaucratic, but I think that the overall framework can apply to small businesses just as much as it might apply to a large business. I think at the end of the day, whether you're a 100,000 person company or a 1-person company, it's very important to understand, what is the context that your business is sitting in, and think about how you can create unique value for your customers. Does also have anyone else from the corporate strategy team that'd like to chime in on that?
I think that's right, Peter. And staying focused on what your business is, how it can be different, and exactly as you said, who your core customer is.
Awesome, thank you. The next question we have is from Terry. He says, did you update your SWOT analysis to the pandemic?
Yes, that's definitely something that needs to be updated on an ongoing basis. And I think that sometimes the traditional way of thinking about strategic planning is that, it has to be this once, exercise that you go through once a year. And I would encourage you to think about, instead of tying your strategic planning process to a timeline, going through this process when there are new challenges that your business is facing, or new opportunities, or a major change to your business environment. It doesn't need to just be once a year. It can be, once a month or multiple times a year. It should be guided by, changes to your internal capabilities, or to your customers' preferences, or to the, environment that your business is sitting in, and it needs to be adapted over time. As Felipe said at the outset, this shouldn't be something that just sits on your shelf gathering dust over the year. It should be something that you reference frequently, and informs your decision making.
And so,
one thing I'd add, and maybe Mary, if you can jump to page 8.
Sorry, what page was that, John?
8. So here at the top, as far as how the pandemic has impacted our business, and I know there was a question about, how did we change our SWOT as a result of that? Really, those factors at the top are influencing how our objectives have changed and how we think about our SWOT. So our mission and vision, our mission of no one better connects the world stays the same. We've alluded to some of, demand customer mix. Some of the business travel is slower. There's some more premium leisure travel that we're seeing. International travel has been highly impacted by travel restrictions, as well as people being a little bit more fearful about traveling internationally. There's a ton of uncertainty. Competitors are trying to grow a lot as a result of some of this pullback. And so we're being, need to be cognizant of that. I think the customer experience is a big part. We talked about, blocking middle seats. We also think about what we can do to make the customer experience better and more aligned with our vision of, a magical travel experience, in addition to the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion and sustainability. So, we're still working through what our strategy is and can't share all of that, but would point out that, those are the factors that, to Peter's point of how the context has changed for us, those are what we've identified as things that change the context, and coming out of that, come up with what our strategic plan is.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, John.
If I could just add, one thing to what John said. I think that, the context of our business has changed, and certainly our strategy has changed. But one thing that hasn't changed is the values that underlie our decision-making and the vision. I think that, in a time of crisis, as COVID was for our business, is really when you see those values put to the test.
100%. Thank you for that. So I'll take 2 more questions. I know we have our breakout room activity in a few, and we will take additional questions as well towards the end of the session. I wanted to make sure I get towards this session from Lisa. She says, what are some formats a small business can use to gauge their existing clients' feedback of our products and services?
Felipe, did you want to touch on that?
Sorry, I was responding to Doris. What was the question?
Ways to get feedback from customers.
Yeah, so happy to. I think we certainly invest in a lot of different ways to getting feedback from our customers. I think the most important thing is what you've already done, which is identify that you need that connection. And so we invest in things, emails, text, in-app. What's the right way to ask what type of question based on the way the customer really wants to give that feedback? And really one of the most valuable ones is that in the moment feedback we get by having our frontline connect directly with our customers and bringing that back to us. But I think it's really understanding what is the feedback I need and how will my customer, my client feel most comfortable in delivering that to me via channel, via method, via type of technology in order for me to understand that. And where do I need to invest more in spending more time to be able to understand the why, as in addition to just the what in terms of the quick survey question or quick response.
Sorry, thank you for that, Felipe. All right, and then I'll do one more question before breakout rooms. This one just came into the chat, and she asked, Karine, she mentioned, what are the signs that a strategic plan is viable?
I will pass that along and say that is one of our, I think, our second breakout section. So we'll leave that maybe as a little bit of foreshadowing in terms of moving in that direction.
All right, sounds good. And so we still have a few more questions. However, we have noted them down and we'll make sure that we ask the specialist during the next portion of our breakout rooms, of our Q&A portion. All right, so now we'll be getting into breakout rooms. Peter, is there anything you would like to share regarding the breakouts, or, is it just time to go into the rooms?
No, I think the moderators will explain what we're doing in the breakout sections, but at a high level, we'll be filling out a SWOT analysis for your company using the framework we described in the last section. And then we'll be kind of brainstorming some initiatives and having a short discussion with the group about how those initiatives might create value from for your business and what you've learned from it. Mary just shared in the chat a downloadable version of the worksheet that you'll use for this exercise. So please do make sure to download that and use that for the breakout session.
All right. Sounds great. And so I'll be opening the breakout rooms now. We'll be going in for about 20 minutes. Feel free to share resources. Again, we wanted to make sure you had these small rooms in order to curate a safe space for you to share resources and be as active as possible and interactive as possible. All right, so I'll be opening the rooms now.
One got it.
All right, let's see.
Anytime. I can't get it. What's going on? You're fine. Oh, the phone.
Everyone should be able to have their breakouts. Let's see. Terry. There we go. Hello, hi, Amy and Brisa. We are currently in breakout rooms. Did you get kicked out of your breakout room or are you just coming in?
Hi, Audrey. I just jumped in. Sorry, I was in a meeting that ran a bit long.
No worries at all. So let me go ahead and we have about 15 more minutes in the breakout. So let me go ahead and add you to one.
Well, Audrey, I was gonna say I was gonna have you guys in the background as I kind of caught up with a couple things, so you don't need to put me in a breakout session if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine. And what about you, Amy?
Thank
Audrey, same for
you.
me. I'm just joining. I had a meeting run over, so.
No worries at all.
we're back.
Welcome back, everyone. We're waiting, the countdown is still on. We're waiting for a few more rooms to close discussions, giving it 35 more seconds. All right. 20 more seconds. I hope the breakout room activities were helpful for you, and it reviewed kind of what the presentation that was given by Peter, John, and Felipe earlier as well. All right, 8 more seconds. We have everyone coming back. All right. Everyone should be back now. And I believe I am moving it over to Mary. So Peter or John, feel free to share your screen. And Mary, the floor is yours.
Audrey, some of us, at least myself, only caught the very tail end of what you just said based on when we joined. So can you repeat that?
Yeah, no worries. Mary will be starting. So Mary, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Audrey. So hello, my name is Mary Gray. I am a manager on the corporate strategy team. I've been at Delta for 7 years across a variety of different departments in revenue management, route planning, sales, and international strategy. So now that we've gone through brainstorming initiatives to drive your company's strategy, it's time to discuss how to execute on those strategic initiatives through a measured approach and specific tactics. So a key element in executing your initiatives is how you prioritize them. I think we had a very timely question that was not planted, but one on the prioritization. And as Felipe alluded to, this goes directly into this session. So there are 3 main considerations that we're going to review today on the prioritization front. The first is desirability. So does this initiative align with the wants and needs of your target customer segment? And even more than that, are you providing incremental value compared to what your competitors are offering? Next, we have the viability of the initiative, and essentially, can your business make money from it? It's really definitely important to assess this from a profitability perspective. What are the revenue and cost implications here? But while profitability is important, it's also worth remembering that sometimes there's strategic value to an initiative that doesn't directly tie to profitability. So one example is Delta flies over 200 cities in 50 plus countries, and not all of our routes at every point of the year are going to be profitable, but there are certain routes we may fly that are profitable during the summer, but in order to provide that strategic value of having that city year round, we operate it during the winter, or maybe it brings in a little less cash. So that covers viability. And the third area of consideration is feasibility. So is it possible to implement this initiative? And under feasibility, we have, the people and the technology consideration. Do we have the right people and technology in place? What, if any, are the legal, policy, and privacy risks? And then how would this impact the operation? So a couple of ways that we can approach measuring these considerations. One is through customer surveys. That is one possibility that you can go down. Another is through conducting client interviews or focus groups to get firsthand feedback from your customer set. Also utilizing data when possible to drive key insights. And of course, staying very relevant with the industry trends, what's in the news, and what's changing. So now that we've discussed these 3 considerations, we'll go a step further and look at how we can apply this to a specific example. So as Peter used earlier, we'll take a look at the Delta seat product Premium Select and where this would map across these three considerations, ranking them on a low, medium, and high scale. So first, do customers want it? It's a new product with a wider seat, better amenities, better in-flight entertainment. And at the end of the day, we're providing customers with an additional choice. So on the customer desirability front, we've ranked this as a high. But we also want to consider internally what this means for our business, looking at employee desirability. So one major benefit of Delta Premium Select is it's providing incremental revenue for Delta as a whole, impacting Delta's bottom line and ultimately increasing profit sharing for the employees. So, it's high on this front, but on the flip side, and the reason we've given it the medium is that whenever a company launches a new product, this adds a layer of complexity. There's additional training for the reservations agents who are selling the tickets. There's also, an additional cabin that now our in-flight crew are working. And so while this is overall a very positive product, there is a small initial hurdle to overcome here. So next, looking at viability, really the first question to ask yourself is, are customers willing to pay for your product? In this case, it translated into higher fares for customers who maybe were previously purchasing main cabin, but we found that largely customers were willing to spend slightly more per ticket for those added benefits. And also under viability, of course, the question of profitability. So Delta Premium Select was a new revenue stream for Delta, really good revenue opportunities there, and not too many costs. So there were some costs of putting the new seats into the aircraft, taking the aircraft out of service temporarily while we did that maintenance work. But as a whole, the business case was overwhelmingly positive, and we've moved forward with putting this product into many of our international aircraft. Not all of them, but a good subset of our fleet now have this product. So finally, on the feasibility front, one of the major considerations to look at is technology. And for Delta Premium Select, we had the ability to price, sell, and market this product with some incremental work, but very small comparatively. And then also assessed, are there any risks associated with it? So for Delta Premium Select, we disclose everything at the time of purchase. There are really minimal legal privacy risks, and also very few implementation risks. So this was one example of essentially an initiative that Delta put into place a couple of years ago, where as a company we determined, do our customers want it? Will it increase our profitability? And can we easily implement it? And through looking at the low, medium, and high scale on each of these fronts, determined that this was an initiative we were going to move forward with. Something to keep in mind for all of you as you're thinking about the 3 to 5 initiatives that you brainstormed in this last breakout session is, you might have 5 initiatives that customers want, that you as a company want, but if one is going to be a huge lift and not super feasible, and you're going to have 2 to 3 smaller ones that your customers want, and it's more feasible and viable to implement, then those are the ones to really start with. So I think the goal of this exercise is to not determine necessarily if your initiative is a good idea, because all of them, have different merits, but determining how do we prioritize these initiatives across different timeframes and what's feasible when. So in this next breakout session, we have some time set aside for everyone to fill out one of these sheets. It was included in the worksheet that was shared in breakout 1. So we'll take some time, we'll fill in this sheet, and then we'll take time as the breakout group to discuss what it looks like for each of the initiatives for the different groups. And then after that, we'll come back together, we'll have one more concept to review, and then we'll go into our final Q&A as a group.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mary. I'll go ahead and open the next set of breakout rooms for 15 minutes now.
Thank you.
All right. Patricia and Katie, were you able to get your breakout room notifications?
No, nothing popped up on my screen. The last time it just automatically sent me there.
Do you know what?
That's what happened with mine too.
Yeah.
You know what breakout room you were in specifically? Who the leader was, or?
I don't remember his name.
Okay, it was a him. Peter, Felipe.
Felipe.
Felipe. All right, so Katie was in Felipe's room. Let me make sure I know where that is. Room 4. Okay. Katie was in room 4. And then Patricia, you're not sure?
No, it was a lady, and there was also a gentleman from the supply diversity team in the same room.
Maybe Axel?
Probably, but it was, yeah, the main facilitator was a lady.
All right, let's see. We have Lakeisha, we have Kimberly, we have Lindsay. Let me know if any of these.
I was kind of booted into it, probably after the introductions. I'm not sure.
No worries. I'll put you in. Let me go ahead and put you in group 6.
Thank you.
Oh, hi, Abraham. Were you kicked out of your room? Can you hear me? It's like, I'll go ahead and move you to one of the, oh, there you go. Hi, Jessica. We are currently in breakout rooms right now. Did you just come in?
No, I was locked out of my breakout room. I think I was in the breakout room with Josh. Or was it John? I think it was John. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. Let's see. Let me look at it. It's breakout room. All right. Welcome back. We have some more individuals coming in. Welcome back. All right, give it a couple more minutes. All right. All right. It seems like majority of individuals are back. So Mary, I am going to, yeah, there you go. All right, let me go ahead and ensure that you are spotlit.
Okay, thank you. So to wrap up, once you determine which initiatives to go after and how to prioritize them, there are really 3 key tactical areas to consider. So this is the bottommost rung of that pyramid. Most importantly is the people. So ensuring you have the employees and the right people in place to carry out your initiative. 2 drivers behind this will be the culture of your company and a strong emphasis on DE&I. Next, we have the process. So how to ensure that you are covered operationally as you implement these new initiatives and providing accountability mechanisms and feedback loops along the way as you implement. And then finally, from a tools perspective, ensuring that you have the right tools, whether that's data avenues or other forms of technology, and ensuring they're in place to carry out your initiative. So what we've included in this deck, as well as in what we will share with you after, is this overview page, so you can map out the people, the process, and the tools that would be necessary in order to implement these initiatives. Given the timing today, we did not have the opportunity to include this in the breakout session, but we wanted you to have this as post work as you continue to think through your initiatives. And we would also recommend, even though we only did 1 initiative for that low, medium, high tool overview, definitely take the time and take your broader list of initiatives that you brainstormed in that first breakout and apply the low, medium, high criteria across them so that you can prioritize what to focus on in 2022. So in summary, we have reviewed the key fundamentals of strategic planning today, looking at the vision and the mission of what you do and what you aspire to be, how your company can achieve these goals through its objectives, what new strategic initiatives can help you get there, and then how to approach the prioritization and tactics to execute these initiatives, leveraging key frameworks along the way. So at this point, we will go into the final Q&A of the presentation. We'll have about 10 minutes for this portion, and then we'll do one final wrap up and be done from there. So I'll have Audrey, similar to the first Q&A, if you can share with us the questions that you've been receiving.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Mary. We've been getting really great feedback in the chat. And so I do have a couple of questions from the first Q&A portion. We have a question from Sherry. She mentioned question on desirability. D&I is not always that which corporations DEI is not always that with corporations. So can you or should we exchange with necessity? Sherry, if you want to get off mute and clarify the question, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I really did go to school, and I really do know how to write on that. I really did. Sorry about that. And I think we kind of talked about that in the breakout group of maybe even adding another column. So, when you think about DEI, or you think about HR things, people don't want to do that. So there's not that desire. No one says, oh my gosh, I get to go to a sexual harassment class, or oh yay, I get to go to a diversity, equity, and inclusion, for the most part. So it's kind of hard to really kind of think about that whole desirability. And we kind of talked about creating a word. I came up with the word, I'm sure I'm not the first, but kind of needability versus desirability. But then how do we interchange that so that we make a correct assessment on the feasibility of things? Because you don't want to use scare tactics, because that only works for so long. People go from being scared to being angry. So we don't want to force anybody into it, but we do want to kind of tweak it to where it should be a desirable thing to, kind of want to enter into those conversations. So that's kind of what I meant.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, so I think you bring up a really good point, and I like how you brought in that the needability, because I think that's ultimately the step before desirability, right? Like, some people know they want something, but in other scenarios, the company has to introduce it so that customers and employees realize that they, yes, do need it, but also to want it. So my recommendation would be, I think those are two separate avenues to go down. One is, the customer front of, do customers want it? I think one thing we're seeing in the news, certainly we're seeing internally at Delta, and I'm sure many of you are seeing on your side as well, is that this is becoming an important sticking point for customers, more so than it ever has been. And this is fantastic, and something, Delta is working into our mission even more so through some of the great work that Kimberly and the DE&I or council are doing it. But I think the other piece is on employees and making sure they recognize the importance in and day out. One thing we're doing on our side in our department is we recently launched a diverse mentorship program for leaders, specifically to talk about important pieces of DE&I and making sure that leaders who maybe previously it wasn't always at their forefront of how they were approaching decisions start incorporating it more into their day-to-day. I'm definitely not the expert here, and so if Kimberly or we also have a member on the call today, Pauline, who's on that DE&I workforce, have anything to add about how to bring DE&I to the forefront, definitely would open the floor to them.
Mary, I honestly think you covered it. I was actually in the great breakout group, Sherry, that talked about this, and it definitely resonated with me that sometimes you need to think about needability first, and that will obviously be incorporated into your risk assessment, because if people don't want to do something even though they need it, there's obviously going to be more risk associated with it, but you definitely don't want to devalue the importance of it as a result of that. So thank you. You covered it.
Awesome. Thank you for that response. We do have another question. So Kimberly actually put this in the chat. She asked the corporate strategy team, can you please expand on risk assessment? A question from our breakout session. If your risk is low, how should you proceed? If your risk is high, how should you proceed?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I think with any of these initiatives, there is going to be some degree of risk, and it's essentially assessing how much risk is there, and on that spectrum, how much benefit is it adding, and does the benefit outweigh the risk? So there are going to be certain cases where if a risk is on a safety front, Delta would not be willing to take that risk. There are other cases where there might be minimal risk, and we go and consult our legal department and determine that, the risk is low, and with certain disclosures, the risk is almost negligible. And so in those cases, we will, move forward with certain initiatives. I think, that's a very broad question, because with each initiative, there is going to be risk, and risk is not something that you can completely counter out, but it's determining, is the initiative still beneficial, and is the risk small enough that it is worth moving forward with it overall.
Sounds good. Thank you for that, Mary. And then we had another question from Jill Huanan. During the execution phase, how do you address opportunity costs?
Okay, that's a really good question. So the question was, during the execution phase, how do you assess opportunity costs?
How do you address them?
Does anyone from corporate strategy want to jump in on this one? If not, I can move with it.
I'm happy to, yeah. So, I think this framework can be used in two different ways. We talked about this in our discussion group, our breakout group. So one is, if you fill out for a single initiative, it can help point out where are there points of your initiative that you need to invest in thinking a little bit more, or test or understand, like, should I develop an action plan to address some of the weaknesses in this initiative and pull forward the strengths. The other way that you use this would be to fill out multiple of these sheets and compare against each other. And that really helps you to understand, where should I prioritize resources? Where am I going to be having high opportunity costs for pursuing something, even if it's a great opportunity, because there's an even greater opportunity to go pursue over here. And I think leveraging this framework for both of those really is where you can start to really refine, where's the biggest investment of my time, my scarce resources, my team, and moving forward to get to where I want to go and delivering on my mission and my vision.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Felipe. All right, so most of the questions that we had earlier on were answered in the chat. And so I think that's about all the time we have. Does anyone, we can take one last question from the audience if anyone has a dire question. If not, I wanted to ensure that the group is also aware of some opportunities at WBENC. I don't know if a lot of you know this, but we do have an opportunity, some speaking opportunities and an opportunity to contribute to some content. And so I've provided the links in the chat. This is on our website. Something to consider as you're thinking through your 2022 strategy as well. And I want to thank everyone so much for attending today's session. Thank you so much to our speakers for your insightful discussions, content, resources. I mean, we had a fantastic time. Thank you to Michelle, Kimberly, Mary, Felipe, Peter, John. Thank you all so much for this great session. I hope that you enjoyed it just as much as I did. And we're getting really great feedback in the chat. Again, thank you for this session, and a lot of hand claps as well. And so that's all that we have for this year. Thank you for being with us for this whole year, attending our sessions. We have great sessions in store for you next year, and we hope to see you soon in the new year. Merry Christmas, everyone, and happy holidays. Thank you so much.